All right, welcome back to another episode of Generation to Generation Bridging the Gap with Rex.
And Eva, and we're so excited to have you with us today.
We're always excited to hang out.
Yes, we're so excited. And so, why don't you tell them what we're talking about today?
What are we talking about today? We are actually reintroducing ourselves. We just hit episode 50 in our podcast journey, and we've been doing this for a little over a year. And we are making the transition to video files. Up to this point, we have just been audio, but we figured it was time to up our game, go to the next level, include video. And so here we are.
Here we are.
Video and audio files synced, but we thought it'd be a good time to reintroduce ourselves. Just tell people what we're about with the Generation to Generation podcast. And our why statement is extremely simple. We think it's very clear. We encourage genuine and authentic conversations between the generations.
Yeah, it's the whole point of this was to learn and to teach others how to communicate with each other. We have, what is it, 41 years? 40, how many years is it between us? Is it 47 or 41? Or
What
46?
is the difference between us? You're asking difficult questions.
It's
There's
40 plus
40,
years.
there's 47. There's
Yeah,
47. Yeah, I'm sitting here doing quick math. 47.
there's 47 years between us. So you experienced 47 years of life before I came into it. Before you, as you've said many times, which you can talk about again, but how you stepped out of your world and into mine. And it's very interesting because I feel like I've seen a lot in my 18 years, but you had lived over double that by the time I came around. And so there's a lot of wisdom, a lot of advice, and I feel like something in our generation, in my generation specifically, being 18 years old, being Gen Z, is we've kind of lost the ability to communicate with each other, and then people, specifically people above us, people like our elders. And you and I, my entire life, have always talked well. It's always been something, whether it was sitting in the car going to daycare, or when you were picking me up from school on Wednesdays because mom worked late, or when we were sitting on the front porch talking, or going to breakfast. We've always talked. And we realized how rare that is with people, and specifically because we would tell people about it, and people were like, "Oh, I wish I could get my kid to sit at the dinner table and talk to us about their day or about their opinions on things." And so we were like, "Well, what have y'all done differently? What have you and mom done differently to help encourage that?" And so we just started a podcast to talk about it. And for me, I'm getting hours and hours of your wisdom recorded, and for you, you're getting to share your wisdom, and we're getting to teach other people just how to communicate.
Yeah, and it's been a fun ride this past year. A couple of things on your comments. Number one, the whole premise I got from my dad, your grandfather. I will never forget. He told me when I don't know that I was a teenager yet. And he just said, "Son, I always want us to be able to talk." And we've kind of adopted that as our sign off tag to
Mm-hmm.
every episode, regardless of what happens. Let's always be able to talk. But one of the other things he told me, he said, "Son," he said, "when you came into my world," he said, "I realized that my world no longer existed. And if I was going to communicate with you, I had to get into your world. I had to learn your world." And that was such great wisdom from my dad to me. And I've used that with you. I've told that to you
Mm-hmm.
numerous times, and and I'm sure it was difficult for him. We're talking about a guy that grew up in the Depression. He went off to World War II as an 18-year-old, and then here I come along in the 60s and 70s, and it's just a different world. Well, it's the same with me. Here you come along in 2012, and my
No,
world.
I came along in 2006. Thank you very much.
You're right. You're right. What's significant about 2012? Why do I have 2012 on the
No
brain?
idea. No
Maybe
idea.
it's because you were born on the 12th, October the
Maybe.
12th. That's
Yep.
probably it. Okay. All right. I'm sorry. 2006. You come along 1 year before the iPhone, by the way.
Yeah.
iPhones were released in 2007. So you truly are the iPhone generation.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up in that world, so I've had to learn your world. And I think that's where people in my generation, sometimes we do make that mistake. And I'm so grateful to my dad for having that wisdom to tell me, hey, I've got to learn your world. And it doesn't negate the life experience that he had, the lessons learned that he had to share with me. And that's one thing I appreciate about you is that you adopted that early on. And it was really the genesis of the podcast. One day you just, I don't know what it was, but it was like you had an epiphany and you're like, Dad, you got some really good life lessons learned and I need to pay attention to those. And that gave me the idea. I thought, okay,
So
she
you were
gets
sitting on the front steps.
we were. And it's like, well, let's do a podcast.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how this happened.
Yeah, it's, we're not like, sometimes I think a lot of people, when it comes to podcasts, they think, oh, I have to have this big platform already, or I've got to have this massive influence, or I've got to have these important family members, or things like that. But I think what's so cool about us is, we're normal people. We have cool stories. Sure, you have an incredible story, which we'll talk about later, but it's I think it's comforting to a lot of people who listen to us is we don't, we were not like you look at sometimes when like you're at a church event or something and you have a speaker on stage and they've, like Sadie Robertson or something. Her family has been on TV her entire life, things like that have this platform and you're like, "Oh, I could never like have a platform like that. I could never speak like that." And then it's just like, "No, like these are the same conversations you and I have with each other." We're just on recording now because like last week we did an episode on Memorial Day and it was like last episode we did an episode on it and it was really interesting because I had never known the meaning of Memorial Day. So 20 minutes before we were recording we were sitting in your office talking about it and we pretty much had the same conversation, just more in depth on recording. And so it's really, really cool because all we're doing is talking. All we're doing is asking questions and being willing to hear each other out, and that's the heart of it. There's not this big script where we're not scripted. We really don't have a plan going into this half the time. We kind of just choose a topic 20-30 minutes before, spend a couple minutes researching it, and then go in and talk about it. So sometimes we're not always the most educated. Sometimes we ramble a little bit. Sometimes we stumble. And I think that's what's so real about it, is the fact that we are so authentically us on it, which is exactly what we're trying to do, is create authentic conversation. But I talk to you the same exact way on here as I do sitting in front at the dinner table or sitting in your office or riding with you in the car or on our front steps. And so I think that's something that's super important.
Yeah, and I love that, Eva. And again, we just really started out wanting to be an encouragement to families that might be struggling with their communication because we get that a lot. As a pastor, sometimes I hear that from people in small groups, just in casual conversation, hey, how do you talk to your teenager? We struggle. And I'm like, well, I have a hard time relating to that because again, we've never struggled in our
Mm-hmm.
communication. Again, I credit my dad with that
Yep.
a lot just because of his philosophy. But I will tell you this, you and I never had an argument or a disagreement prior to the podcast.
Nope.
We never had any tension whatsoever. Now, your mother and you, because you are very much alike, yep, you guys kind of bump heads a little bit. And
With you, like you told me to do something and I do it. I really like I was stubborn. That was one thing. But I never really like fought back. I would feel like I threw a shoe at you once, but I was also 3 and probably tired. Um, but like
yeah,
we never.
you want to tell them how that story played out,
So there was
or
like a mother.
you
Yeah,
want to skip that?
we'll tell it because this kid tells you a lot about my personality if you're new to this, because we've kind of like skipped over some important facts about the fact that like you're a pastor and you were in the army for 22 years and I just graduated high school and all of these things. That's the TLDR. But at like 3 or 4 at daycare, they did like a parents' night out where like they dropped the kids off after hours and let the kids like stay and hang out and while parents could have like a date night and everything. And I did not want to leave. at all. Did not want to leave when it was time to come pick up. And I'm like throwing a temper tantrum. It's probably past my bedtime. It's probably a lot of things happening. I had severe FOMO as a kid, like all these things. And so I took my shoe off and I threw it at him while he was driving. I don't remember if you pulled over and whooped my butt then. I can't remember that, but I do remember
I can
that.
assure you that I did.
Okay, so he
And
pulled
I'm
over
surprised
and
that it's not memorable.
um, well, I thought that was what happened, but I didn't know if you waited till we got home. But I did get my butt whooped because we're Southern, and that's how it works. Um, but it, but that tells you a lot about it. That's how I was real. Like with my mom, I would fight back. I would give her like, I would use my words. I would be snappy. But with him, like, I would do it. If he got on to me about something, I'd do it. I may complain, but I would do it. But when we started this podcast, ooh, we for the first time ever, our words, my words became more directed at him. Um, I did not like the way we were doing some things, and it took a long time because here's the heart of it was we talk a lot about how to communicate generation to generation, and we talk a lot about how my generation has a really hard time communicating with the older generation, but a big thing we had to overcome ourselves was you had to learn how to communicate with me because I already was having to like break down like how I communicated about the technology and things because for a lot of this being an iPhone kid essentially technology is second nature to me. I move through things a lot quicker. I troubleshoot a lot quicker because I know what to expect in things. And so I had to break down how like I was doing the recording and how I was doing all this a lot slower for you, but you were not. There was a wall between us when it came to how you communicated with me about like episode topics and what we were talking about, and so it was a lot of attention. Like I think like tension. I think we stood outside of lunch after church one day and kind of just passionately talked to each other for like 45 minutes outside of the Jason's Deli, um, and it was just like a whole like this there was just this fight we could not get through an episode. It was a problem, and then in November of last year we hit a breakthrough. We communicated, and it essentially just took me saying I don't need you to send me detailed written notes. I need you to sit with me before it and communicate with me like via talk. Reading it doesn't do anything for me. It took us like a solid what 5 6 months to figure out that's what the problem was. It took us 6 months to figure out that the problem that we were having was how we were communicating with each other. Because we can sit here and talk all day, but the prep for the show we were struggling with. And so it was this big moment. And then in November, if you go back to like November, you can really see there's like a change in how we communicate. We have a better flow. Our topics got more in depth. We had more fun engaging with each other. We were more confident in saying I disagree with you on that. It was a lot. I feel like our show like hit a turning point, but we're here teaching people how to communicate, and we couldn't do it ourselves, and so it's been a learning process for us too.
Yeah, those are really good points, and it kind of shocked both of us because we had never disagreed before. We have never bumped heads, and we were so frustrated with each other. And I think that is a generational difference, and part of it is my background as a military officer, and I'm an accountant by education, so I'm very detailed. I have a C personality on the DISC profile. I want things in order. I want it dress right dress. It was difficult for me to even pull the trigger on this podcast because I knew it wasn't going to be perfect out of the gate. And our coach really had to encourage us in that. And I'm so glad that he did. But nonetheless, when you have two co-hosts, that's another thing we learned. It's one thing if you're going to host a podcast by yourself, but when you have a co-host and you have to agree on the topic, how you're going to approach it, let's just forget the details, the major sub points. We bumped heads on that a little bit, but again, because of my background with the detailed personality, I wanted to write out a script with all of the main points, all of the sub bullets, and then 2 to 3 sentences under each paragraph. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted all of that in writing, and that frustrated you because you felt like that came across scripted, and that even though I wasn't talking off the script, because I had written the script, I was still basically talking off the
Yeah, you were
script.
deferring to
And
it.
Yes. And so we just had to work through that. And I'm in the process of writing my first book. It's kind of funny. My editor is a Gen Z person. And so you have a boomer that's written the book, and it's very detailed. I tell a lot of stories, and the editor is looking at it. And again, I know she's a Generation Z person. She just wants the details. And I'm like, girl, you missing half the story here. But I've had to learn to kind of meet her in the middle.
Yeah.
Hey, don't tell so much story and don't expound so much that you lose the reader. And for her, she's just like, hey, cut to the chase. And I'm like, okay, I get it. We got two opposite ends of the spectrum. We got to come in the middle and meet and get a
Yep.
product out. And it's the same thing with
And I think
podcasts.
our podcast probably helped with that, learning, how to take that. Because, a lot of people come to us and they're like, I have a really, like, I led a small group for middle school girls, and I had a mom sit down and talk at the table with me for an hour after. And we were just talking about some of the topics we had talked about on the podcast. And I was like, I work with kids, so I'm very good at communicating with younger kids than me. That's just something God has gifted me in. And I'm growing up with older parents. I grew up communicating with a lot of older people. And so I communicate very well with people older than me. And so I was like, she was asking me, she was like, how do you talk to your parents? Like, like, I hear how you talk on the podcast, but like, how do you encourage that? How do you engage with that? How do you feel comfortable opening up to them? And it was this great moment of like, you have to meet them where they are too. Because like sometimes I'll make a joke or something and you and mama just look at me so confused or like flabbergasted, because to me it's funny, and to you it like goes over your head or something like that. Like I made a joke last night or whatever about Formula One, and y'all were like, they didn't get it. And I was like, so you can't, as a parent, you can't only communicate to your kids in your language. And your kids can't only communicate to you in their language. You have to find a way to meet in the middle. So when I'm talking to kids
But
younger than me, I can use some more simple analogies, or I can make jokes. When I'm talking to my friends, I can make these jokes. Not that they're bad jokes, it's just that they're very generational specific. And the way you communication's not this one size fits all thing. You have to find the right shape for the right hole, essentially, and how you communicate. And so talking to older people, like talking to you and talking to mama, I have to use different analogies. I have to explain some things more in detail, or I can completely like skip over explanations for some things because I can just say a word and you mean it. And so it was just a great thing of, you just have to learn how to step into the shoes of the person you're trying to communicate with. And I used this great analogy when I was, actually, we were in the middle of a fight when I told mama this analogy, and I said, during the podcast, I feel like I place both you and mama on equal pedestals. But for her, there's rungs of a ladder going from the ground to the top that I can communicate to her through. So I can climb up to go see her, she can climb down to come see me. But to you, for a long time there was the pedestal, but there was only rungs going from top to halfway, and so there was no way for me to get up to you, but you could get halfway down to me. And or other way around, there were rungs from the bottom to halfway, but there wasn't from the top to the other way. And so I was stuck in the middle. And so I would have to go up to mama and talk to her for her to communicate to you, because I was having a hard time finding a way to talk to you. And so after I used that analogy, and after we talked through it of like how I need you to communicate with me specifically in regard to the podcast, all of a sudden there was this breakthrough. But it's just, you have, like, especially with parents and kids, you have to know your child. You have to know your parent to communicate well with them, especially to have this level of trust. I think trust, yes, it is knowing that this person has your back and they want the best for you and they're there to support you. But a big part of trust also comes from knowing that they're going to meet you where you are and they're going to come to your level or you can get to theirs. That there's not this wall between it. I feel like with my teachers, for example, there's this wall that's there of, yes, I trust them, knowing that they have the best interest at heart for me when it comes to my papers and my things like that. But it's not like I can go pour my life problems out to them, because there's not rungs of the ladder to get there. And so, yes, there is a level of trust, but there is not this deep trust that I have with my best friends or that I have with my parents or with my aunts and uncles and things like that. And so it's all about, you have to find a way to get there. Communication isn't going to fall into your lap. And so that was a big thing that I think we've both learned through this podcast and through generation to generation, and learning how to communicate is bridging the gap.
yeah, again, great points, Eva. And a lot of times what you're talking about is we tend to mirror image. We do that, in policy, in governmental affairs. We think the rest of the world operates like Americans do, and we make policies that way. It's called mirror imaging, and the rest of the world doesn't think the way we do. Well, it's the same way in communication, and that's what I was trying to do with you initially because I am a visual learner. I want to see the plan on paper. I want to see the bullet points. And so, because I want to evaluate those, I want to think about them. I want to kind of turn them over. And it gives me a chance to do that when I have it either on the phone or on a piece of paper, an email,
Yep.
whatever it is. But you're not like that.
I'm
And
much more
so
of an audio learner.
yes. And so you wanted to talk it out. And so when I would text you a plan, I would
I
just
wouldn't read
text
it.
you a plan because I'm like, why aren't you doing that like me? I'm trying to be courteous to give you a plan in advance that you can kind of look it over, you can think about it. That's not the way you
I wouldn't
communicate.
read
You
it.
didn't want that. Yeah, and you finally told me it'd make you mad when I
It
sent
did.
them.
It would. It would make me mad. I would like he would send them to me at like 8 in the morning, and I wouldn't have to be up till like 10. And I would check my phone, and I would look at it, and I wouldn't come out of my room for 30 more minutes just because I couldn't talk to him. I was like, I have told him I hate these. I've told him don't send these to me. Like you sent me a note the other day about the order of podcasts we're recording for this summer. I still haven't opened it.
Yeah.
Because I sat in your office and you talked me through them. Like, I still haven't opened it. I let you send them to me for your sake. No, I go to your office. I say, okay, can you summarize what was in that note for me? Can you talk to me about what was in that note? Because I'm not going to read it. And which is so funny because I'm a big reader. I love reading, which is so funny. I love reading. I love philosophy. Don't give me a detailed list of how to do something. I'm going to learn a whole lot better if you talk me through it, you know? And so, like, half the time when I would go to office hours to talk to my teachers, it wouldn't be for specific questions. It would be, can you just talk me through the rubric? Because the rubric's there. I can read it, but I want to be able to talk to you about it and be able to say, okay, I understand that, but I don't understand what this word means exactly. Can you, like, explain what your intentions were behind that? And it works. I wrote better papers when I started doing that, you know, and so that's how we communicate it. And that's the whole point of the podcast. Is it like it seems like this is G to G. You think we would be much more organized? You think we would have months of episodes planned? You think we would have all of this research? You think we would be more professional about it? But we're not. We're two people. We're a father and daughter who have like 47 years between us. I've grown up with technology. You haven't. You know, I'm trying to start college in the fall. You're trying to write a book. You're in what is it you call the fourth quarter of your life? You know,
Yep.
I'm just starting the first or the second. Things like that. It's like, you know, we we're real authentic people who make mistakes. And that's the beauty of the podcast is we're not perfect. We're not scripted. We're not a TV show. You know, we're not taking multiple takes to do this. And it shows
Or
it's an
winging,
example.
we're winging it.
We are. We are the if you meet us in person, we're the exact same we are on camera. Like, you know, we are the exact same here. I think that's not something that's like the people close to us who also listen to the podcast. I think they know us better. And it's really funny because somebody will come up to me at like church or something and they'll like mention something and I'll be like, how do you know this? And then I forget they listen to the podcast because I'll ramble about the same things that I'm passionate about here on the podcast as I will in person. And it's like great because they'll come up to me and they'll be like, so how is like your thesis? And I'm like, I've never told you about this in my life. And then I'm like, oh, no, you listen to our podcast every single week, and I'm the exact same, and so it's a lot of fun. And I think that is the beauty of it. It's taught us to communicate with each other, and I've said it many times. This podcast is not for other people in my book, like for me at least. It's not for other people. It means that, you know, in 10, 20, 30 years when I have my own kids, I can go back and listen to the advice and wisdom that you gave me when I was going through the same thing. You know, the advice and wisdom, the stories, because you won't be here forever. And so having this, and then my kids one day can come and hear their story. It's like a digital like diary or journal for me. And for you, you're using it to pass wisdom and lessons. But for me, it's so much more personal. And so I ask the questions. I say, wait a minute, I don't know what that means, rather than just Googling it, because I want to hear you talk about it. I want to hear you explain it. And that's how communication works, is you have to have a relationship where you can ask questions and where you can say, I don't understand that. And can you explain that to me? Or what do you mean by that? Or can you tell me the story behind that? And that's, we've grown closer because of it.
Yeah, and that's probably a great place to wrap this
Hmm.
episode up, Eva. We just, again, we no question is off limits, and it's just been a lot of fun going through this process. And one of the things, to your point about just a dad and a daughter talking, when we did this or came up with the idea, we have never intended this to build audience in any way. And I think sometimes you made some allusions to this in your initial comments. Sometimes people do things to gain a platform, to gain influence. And we just came into this realizing, hey, we're doing this as a conversation between a dad and a daughter. And oh, yeah, by the way, there are going to be some parents and some teenagers that have difficulty communicating with each other, and they're going to find our podcast, and that is our audience.
Yeah,
And I don't know if
100%.
you remember this, but we talked about our goal initially. We wanted to help 100 families.
Yep.
And I hope that we're doing that already at
But
this
if we're
point.
making a difference in one family's life, that's all that
Absolutely.
matters.
That's all that matters.
And
Yeah,
it's helped like even off the platform too. I think it's helped us become better communicators because I feel like I've become a better communicator because of it. Just being able to talk, having like not even the platform, but it's just like I babysit, I nanny, getting to talk to families. I've gone through this and like having this, I can say, hey, you're interested in the kind of education I've been in. I can talk to you too, but we also have talked about it in two of our podcast episodes. Like we answer a lot of questions in it. We all three of us sit around it, you, me, and mom, and we talk about it. And so it's been very helpful just in our own lives too, of just learning how to communicate with people. I think I've met more people through it. I have better relationships with a lot of people through it. And no question is off limits. We talk about anything. We talk about everything. We talk about Veterans Day or Memorial Day or why voting matters, or we play table topics with each other just to show easy ways you can start a conversation. And it's just we literally nothing is off limits. We will talk about anything. And that's the big thing too is as our listeners, if you have something you want to hear us talk about, please, because I'm sure we would love to talk about it too. No question is off limits. We want to answer your questions. We want to talk about it and see how our own personal experiences shape it and so message us and ask questions if you're going through something in your own life. We would love to talk about it and pass our wisdom down or our experience.
absolutely. So, again, I think that's a great place to stop. By the way, talking about unscripted, we just moved to a new platform, and I got to tell you, I love this. The video quality is much better than our first couple of episodes that we did via video, and so this platform is, as you would say, you didn't hear me say it a while ago. I tried to slip it in when you were talking about communications among the generations. This platform is Firebus.
Funny story about that word. I'll explain it because it's not a popular slang word. Is my best friend was at camp last summer and she tried to say fire and busing, which are both slang words, and it came out fire bus, and it spread around her entire camp, her entire school, all of her friends and family. I use it, my friends use it, my school uses it. So it was fire bus. This episode was fire bus.
And it was Firebus, so great hanging out with you, Eva. And regardless of what happens, let's
Let's
always
always
remember to
be
be able to talk from
from
generation to
generation
generation.
to
You
generation.
remember that? You remember the buy tag?
Yeah, yeah.
Generation to generation.